So if Solomon, you guys can come up here. And anybody got any questions you want to ask about anything of those two talked about this morning?
You know, you had that small swarm there in the front of that hive there. I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to work with these things. They're about the biggest pain in the butt there is to work with. It's a small handful of bees. And they won't go into a nook. It's too big for them. I've been successful a few times of doing it. I had a little clump like that on the top of a Christmas tree one time, and I laying in bed agonizing over what to do about that little thing, you know. I finally got up out of bed and went over there and cut this thing off and put it in a nook with just 2 frames in it and just laid it in there and closed it up. And it wasn't until late that afternoon when I got to work with it, and I went over there and I took the little branch that they were on off and out of there and dropped in 2 more frames, and that queen got with it. I took and fed it. At that time I was feeding a little sugar, and I put it upside down over the top of the nook and put another nook over top of it to protect it so the coon wouldn't get it. And I mean, 2 days later there was brood in there, eggs. I mean, but even then, late in the fall, I found 2 queens in the hive. But they are extremely hard to work with. And I've been working with a lot of bait hives, and I think a lot of these bait hives are small. And I won't touch these bait hives until I see brood, calf brood. I mean, then I'll move it out, move it into better equipment and stuff. But.
And now you ever catch tiny swarms in your swarm traps?
Yeah, when I was in Arkansas, the swarms tended to be quite a bit smaller. Usually not bigger than able to cover 2 frames.
So you've noticed differences in location?
Yeah, but in Oregon, I can't even catch a swarm in a 5-frame nuke. That's too small. They have to have a 10-frame or bigger. They won't go for it.
Solomon, this is not something you mentioned this morning, but I heard it in one of your podcasts. I'm wondering if I misunderstood. You were talking about making splits. And what I thought I heard is that you would take a frame or 2 from several different hives to create a nuke. Is there not you're going to have different pheromones on those different frames from the various hives? Is that not a problem?
One of the interesting things about bees is they really are only defensive of their own cavity. So, for instance, if you want to combine 2 hives, even bigger hives, one of the best things that you can do is put them in, if you got 2 boxes that you want to combine into 1 hive, put them into a 3rd box. As soon as you start moving frames into that new box, you can tell they'll change sound immediately. They know they're not home anymore, and they become much more amenable to being combined. And so when you're doing that method where you're taking a frame out of several different hives to make 1 nuke, they're now not in their home anymore. They have no frame of reference for defending themselves, and so they, especially with nurse bees, are very gentle and relaxed.
Let's do the 2 other things that work for. One is nurse bees, and then the other one is actually, as soon as you get 3 hives instead of 2 hives, there's no more them than us. We're just all confused trying to figure this out. Three combined is a lot less likely to fight than 2 combined. Because there's just more confusion. Confusion is your friend when you're combining them.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, we've done something like that, and we've had 1 hive, and then we had a weak hive, and so we had to combine both of them. And so I think what we did is we put, we didn't know about you know, the experience, so we put like a newspaper there, and then set the other one on top so they could get used to each other to an extent, and that worked out very well. You know, but I'm not sure if we're gonna, if we're just gonna change a procedure or something.
Why did we have it done that way? Because I didn't want to move all the boxes. When you get our age, you think of sometimes the most energy efficient way, and that means our energy. So if we're gonna have to move boxes, then it's he and I and a 2-man lift and a wagon. So one box was already in place and they were very content. It was my hive that I call community, because anytime I was pulling out excess brood from other places, it went in that box. And so I had another one that we had, I think it was at 5 deep, that we lost. It had some remaining bees, maybe some remaining bees in it. And some were reduced, no, all of them were reduced, excuse me. So all I wanted to do was make sure that it went together so I'd have more success with this little community hive. So all we did is took the remaining box out of that 5 deep and put them on to put newspaper on top of little community. I think we might have even punctured the newspaper just a tad.
You did.
And then put that excess on top. Now, it wasn't very long till they ate their way through, and the box that we put on top, that was very limited number of bees, and they had a top entrance if they wanted to use it, but they both had to figure out who they were, and it worked out well.
You did, yes.
You know, we talked about ants here this morning. Anytime you got honey, you're going to have ants. They're after the good stuff. One of the things that I have used successfully is I've used little junk jars, you know, with a lid, poked some holes in it, and put borax and water and some sugar in there. The bees can't, I mean, the ants can't handle the borax. The honey, the sugar will draw them in. I've used that. The other thing I started using was sprinkle a little cinnamon on top of the inner cover.
We'll have to try something.
And around the hive. You can put it around the hive too.
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, I don't see a problem with it. I mean, after all, we eat cinnamon all the time. But it does help deter the bees. Is there anybody else that's using something else? Yes.
We've got a huge problem with black garden ants and fire ants up along the Gurney River. And what I have bought, Man Lake makes a hive stand that has basically a little 1 by 1 inch angle iron that goes down to a little disc. And I put those discs in a Progresso soup can, and I put about 1 inch of used motor oil in it. And that's completely solved my problem with the hives.
Organic use motor oil?
All oil is organic.
Yeah, you know, there's areas where that would work because of rain, you know, rain and the oil would float off and
Not an issue on the desert.
Now on fire ants, what we do is we will actually put grit down, and we find out that the fire ant colony will, you know, come up there, they will eat the grit, and then what will happen is, you know, a lot of them will die, and then eventually they will move, and then you just follow around there, and then they're pretty well gone. You know, so that's how we control our fire ants.
You get these little black ants that actually eat the wood of the brood box.
them little ones are worse than the big ones. I mean, them sons of guns will bite you to hell won't have it.
I take a blowtorch and I turn
the heat up on it.
I love hearing him scream. I imagine I hear him scream. I love it.
was like somewhat effective for a little while. It wasn't very effective for very much. But equal parts borax water and cheap grape jelly works really great.
Grape jelly.
You have to get wet again after it dries out because it'll dry out pretty fast. But once they start hauling back to the ant colonies, they die. The whole colony collapses.
Robin, do you have a question?
You said something about you had to get rid of that super because
Yes.
you draw the ants back in. Do they have something like a pheromone or something?
They
or
do
pheromones?
they do have a pheromone, because what we found out is they will get up there, they will mark that hive, okay? And then what happens is you can, if you move in our case, if you move the box, then they will go to that. They will continue to go to that box. They will find it. So there is something there as far as a pheromone that the ants will come to. That's why that's why we take the old box and we will put the frames into a new box to get that away. And that's what we found out where we live at. Your location may be different, but I would tend to think that it would, that they do have that. You notice that, an ant who have a path, you disrupt the path, and then they will, they get confused. And so, until they find a new path. And so that's what we found out.
So I want to ask a little bit about some tips for swarming. So I'm going to be managing a large number of colonies across a large geographic area, and I don't mind allowing the colonies to undergo the swarming process, but I don't want to lose the swarms. So I have two things in mind to do. One is to have swarm, bait hives around, so I'd love tips on how to get these to actually go into them. And the other thing I want to do is, I'll be visiting every 2 weeks, so if I see the initiation of swarm cells, I want to do an artificial swarming method with the Snellgrove board, and there's like this whole hive manipulation where it ends up being a 2-queen colony until I can get back and remove the second one as a second colony. So have you used that, tried that? And then also, I've heard all different, baits for the hives, and if you use too much, it's bad. If you use too little, they won't find it. So I'd love any.
So on my website and on my YouTube channel, I have my swarm trapping talk, which I did last year here. And on my website, I just completely rewrote the page so it has all the optimal ingredients for the quote-unquote perfect swarm trap.
I'll be testing that.
That'd be great, yeah. So check that out. As far as...
So that particular hive's kind of set up like I said before, it's on the table there. It's kind of how I set them up for a swarm trap. So
Okay.
if you want to go through that and look at it, and
Okay.
somebody that can tell you correctly what I'm doing.
Yeah, so the most important things are cavity size, entrance size, the presence of brood comb. So you want one good solid old brood comb in there. Those are the main, and then a pheromone lure works really well, which you can buy a pheromone lure from any beekeeping supply place for like $2.50 each, or you can make one using a regular Ziploc sandwich bag with a paper towel in it with 5 or 10 drops of lemongrass oil.
What I find works best is I take an ounce of beeswax, 5 drops of lemongrass oil, and blend it together. It'll last indefinitely. Just put on some of the frames, and it's wax. It'll last a long time. It doesn't pour it off like that. Lemongrass can dry up.
Okay, when you're re-queening the hive, queening the queen cells, and new queens, and you're pinching the old queen off, put her in alcohol and just go through and just keep a container full of old dead queens with alcohol. Just 1 or 2 drops in the hive will bring in swarms.
One thing that I found out when a bee will swarm, that they want to go up high, okay? maybe 15, 20 feet high. So if you have access to something that you can construct and put a swarm trap up a little high, and with the, add the additional pheromones stuff that that you do, you might be able to get them, to come up there to begin with. And I believe our bees, where we have them, they will actually go. They will actually come out and they will go to the east to begin with, and then they will move off to the west. That's in my location. So I'm not sure if you have in your location where the bees will go to the west, but you may want to ask around, and that might help you to find where to locate.
Okay.
Honeybee democracy is almost completely about swarming, and he goes through all of his experiments that he's done over the past 30 or 40 years. So like the height thing can be a concern. It's not super important, but it is very helpful. Bees, according to what he found in Ithaca, New York, they like to be an average of 23 or whatever feet off the ground. When I put my hives on trees, I've got a 6-foot ladder. I really don't want to fall much further than that, so that works plenty well. I put them on my back deck at my house, which is about 8 feet off the ground because it's a hill and it just kind of sticks out, and I catch plenty of swarms there. But I also put them on my front porch, which is on the ground, and I catch swarms there also. So there's a bunch of different factors, and the more of them you have is like having better and better bait. So you can, Jason Bruns in Indiana, in a year, on average, he's catching more swarms than he has traps because he's using repeat locations and stuff. But
how are you going to know which treatment group your swarm came out of?
It's a good
The queens
question.
are going to be marked a different color.
Put numbers on
I was thinking about doing that, yeah.
it.
The number badges.
Then you know the hive.
Yeah, I have to get the queen breeder to agree to put them on at the site. I think would be the best.
There's also, Seeley talked about a method invented by somebody back in the 20s or something, using 4 paint colors, and you can use a regular queen catcher paint thing. You stick her in there and you hold her. It holds her for you, and you can paint her. But using 4 queen colors and a specific method, he doesn't tell how to do it, but you can number 600 individual queens just using 4 colors, depending on Right,
gotcha, yeah.
Yeah.
But I do have the numbers already ready.
Oh, great.
So I might as well use them. And there are multiple colors, and then there's 100 of each. Yeah, I wanted to.
Awesome. Mike?
I started actually, I quit climbing ladders to get swarms, so I do a lot of swarm trapping where I'm just trying to lure them out of the tree. And so you get to see a more instant response from the swarm compared to the trap when you're playing around with that. So here's what I've learned over the years. If you're going to move down and you stack the whole deck here, then you'll probably get it. So the most important thing is the lemongrass. Now, you can buy Swarm Commander, it's basically the same thing. Swarm Commander, if you look at what they have in it and what they claim to have in it anyway, and lemongrass oil and Nasanov pheromone. There's 7 constituents to Nasanov pheromone, and 6 of them are in lemongrass oil, and I think all 7 of them are in Swarm Commander supposedly. And there's only like 3 or 4 of them that scientists have ever found that the bees really respond to, and all of those are in all 3 of them. So any of those will work. I mean, Swarm Commander works, there's nothing wrong with it. Lemongrass oil works, there's nothing wrong with it. I wouldn't buy the swarm things because they're too expensive, and I don't bother to do the plastic bag thing. I just put 4 drops of lemongrass oil on there and call it good. But here's the other thing I learned: if I put too much lemongrass oil in the colony, it tends to drive them off.
Yeah.
But if I put it on the outside of that box, I can draw them from further away because they can smell it better. But it doesn't drive them out because it's not inside the colony. So if you put some on the outside, not on the inside. You put 4 drops on the inside, maybe 10 or 15 drops on the outside. That stuff on the outside, the breeze tends to catch it more than what accumulates inside. That seems to help. The queen juice that she's talking about, where you put the queens in the jar, is wonderful stuff. You add that to the lemongrass oil, and that's really effective at drawing them right out of the tree. Because the 2 things that the swarm is centering on is the smell of an Nasanov and the smell of the queen. And when both of those are in that box you're trying to lure them into, they get real confused real quick. They're like, well, I smell a queen down there, I smell Nasnock down there, and they start checking it out, and more of them start moving in, and pretty soon they move in. So that really helps. Old brood comb really helps. Now, old brood comb has all kinds of things in it, like the tarsal pheromones from the queen, all the leftover pheromones from the brood that used to be in it. You know, there's all sorts of pheromones in old brood comb. But let's go back to the queen juice for a minute. I think the queen juice is more effective than the Q and P you can buy, but you can buy Q and P, and it's pretty effective. I think it's not as effective, again, because of all those other pheromones from the queen. You drop a queen in there, you get everything. You get the retin-A pheromone, you get the tarsal pheromones, you get all these other pheromones the queens make besides Q and P. But you can buy pseudo queen if you don't have a jar of old queens to work with, and it's these little plastic tubes. Man Lake was selling them, and they weren't selling them. I think they're selling them again now, because I think I bought some not too long ago. It's this little tiny piece of plastic that's Q and P in it. So if you put that in your swarm trap, that's pretty effective. I would think in terms of putting the swarm traps upwind, because I want them to get a whiff of whatever bait I've got in there, and they tend to prefer to go a quarter mile or so from where they are. That's kind of a bell curve. Sometimes they'll move right next door, sometimes they'll move 4 miles away, but the bell curve is they usually end up a quarter mile from where they started, which makes sense. They don't want to crowd the other colony and be competing too much with it. So if you own enough land that you can do that, I'd put it a quarter mile upwind. If you can't, then put it right next door if that's all you have to work with. You know, and the height thing, I tried to play around with this. I put some way up high. I didn't catch any in any of the ones I put way up high. I wish I'd never bothered. The ones I put 6 or 8 feet up in the tree, I think did better than the ones that are on the ground. But I'm like him. I got up this little step ladder that's easy enough for me to throw in my car, and it's not too hard to put it up 6 feet. It's a lot harder to put it way up there. And 6 feet seemed to make a little difference, and way up there didn't seem to make a difference. Go ahead.
I'll second the 6 to 8 feet. That's always been my best height.
Yeah. I've tailgated my pickups as high as I'm willing to go. It's a good, safe, wide place. But also, just a little chunk of your brood comb thrown in the bottom corner, that will get you what you need. You know, whole frame, sure, if you've got to stretch your brood comb, a little old chunk like that, and bottom of your hive would do the job, doing what they want. So.
Let's go with her. She's had her hand up for a while.
Well, if it's about swarming, go ahead. Mine's back over there.
I had a question too on the queen lure. If I have dead outs, can I find the dead queen and it's not as effective as one you just killed?
I don't think anything is as effective as dropping a live queen has lots of pheromones.
Oh, okay. So like a dead out queen is probably not that good.
Anything to put her in your, probably isn't going to hurt anything. The alcohol's going to kill any and other stuff, but is it going to help? But probably isn't.
Yeah. Hormone levels may be higher in a queen that's laying a lot than in a queen that's shut down.
I've even thrown some virgin queens in there, but I don't think virgin queens make enough pheromones to make any difference. But I've got other new swarms, so you know that's going to hurt. Yeah. So it's not going to hurt anything.
Good lure.
Yeah.
When I do grafting, when I used to do grafting, 10, 20,000 queens at a time until the government stopped me, virgin queens in the extra virgin olive oil, put in and let till it turns color, you know, and use that to drop was the best pheromone I had ever used. So I took 1 drop to get swarms into the mating.
Well, see, I've always thrown those little, anytime I had extra virgin queens, whatever, I've always thrown them in there, but I didn't really have any hope it was improving it that much, but maybe it does, I don't know.
Yeah.
And it does get dark. It'll get black over time.
Yeah.
That alcohol will just get darker and darker.
I've got a bottle with 1 live queen in about 1/4 of an ounce of alcohol in a dropper bottle. I've been using it for 4 years. It seems to work great.
I've got about 40 queens in a little jar like this.
Jake, did you have something?
Well, I just had a question about Robin's original statement. You said you didn't want them to swarm, but if they did, you wanted to catch them. Is there a specific reason you're just not going to prevent swarming?
I'm going to do the usual stuff, like make sure they have enough room and ventilation and stuff, but beyond that, I'm not going to stop the swarming or anything like that.
What size hives are you going to be using?
Yeah.
Well, these
that
are
will need a lot too.
Because I don't have any hives swarm if I manage them. Usually, it's a rare occasion And it's just simple management when you're adding honey supers. So if you're not going to be adding honey supers, they're going to swarm.
So I'm going to be adding honey supers. I just, because of the size of my project, I need to have every contingency plan set by literally 2 weeks from now. So I'm just trying to get all my ducks in a row so that everyone that's doing something for me is doing the same thing that I'm doing. So I'm saying, if you don't manage it properly and they begin the swarming process, then what, like I need literally a flow chart. What are you going to do then?
Well, I think assuming you're going to catch the swarms from your managed colonies and your swarm traps is a little presumptuous, because you could very well easily catch other bees. And I guess you'll know that.
Which is totally fine too.
But
But
if it's not important for the study, it seems like it might be a resource of intensive endeavor. I just
wasted your time.
I'm just curious what if there's a specific reason for not just trying to prevent them from swarming.
Yeah, Dee, you had something to add?
Yeah, now when you're making the swarm pheromone from old queens or even young virgins, if you put them in the alcohol or stuff to make your pheromone, one thing you'll find that's not taught too is keep Italian separate from Caucasian, separate from Carniolan, separate them by the colors and the races, because that way, if you put in Italian pheromone, it's different smelling than Caucasian and the other. And depending on what type hives you have, where you're making up 3 different types, keep them separate by their type, so then you don't commingle, because you'll get better and different results than if you put everything together.
But yeah, I just, you know, like I said, it's just all contingency plans. Management will be to not have them swarm, but if they start the process, you need to know how to handle it. And what I'd like to do is not have them swarm, but do the split.
So,
thing.
you worried about
anytime. I mean, seriously, lately it's been spring through summer. But I'm starting all on new equipment, all on new foundation this year. I don't think they'll swarm, although I've seen it.
Yeah, you have the challenge
next year,
of drawing out all new comb. And so if you get a heavy honey flow, while you don't have a lot of drawn comb, it could end up triggering a swarm and you're not ready for it. And that's where your contingency plan of keeping them from swarming and then recombining them after you've got a new queen or whatever, whatever.
Or if they're really strong, it becomes 2 colonies and all,
Yeah, so
I just don't want to lose the population.
Exactly. You want to keep the population, keep the hive strong while it's building up to this first season, for sure.
Right, and even in the second season, I'd rather have a second colony than a poof of half.
Well, and part of your data collection is going to be productivity of the hives. And if you're losing swarms, you know that hive's not going to be as productive. And so it becomes a variable in all the data analysis.
Yeah, it's economic. I want to get free bees, too, to increase.
Yeah.
Well, how many managers do you have of these said colonies? You said a lot of colonies over a large area. Is there more than one manager? Or like doing the actual bee work?
Me plus 2.
Okay. So you've got to be really critical about your management technique, and you probably should all be working together at all times, because everyone's going to make their own individual decisions in an individual hive, and that.
No, the decision is going to be a decision tree, written up protocol, and this is what you're going to do when you observe this, and this is what you're going to do if it's gone to this point. It needs to be that.
Yeah, I understand that, but people's interpretations of a frame of bees or brood are going to vary, and if you have something, I just foresee some things.
That's okay. That's okay.
Hey everybody.
This is my talk later, by the way.
Yeah, Robin's got a whole talk later. So let's table that discussion for later and let's finish this up real quick before lunchtime. So get everybody's questions asked. Yeah.
I have a question about pest control. lady I know is using diatomaceous earth under her hive, but when I read about it online, there's some thought it might hurt the bees, and I didn't want to do that.
Then don't.
Anybody have experience with, I mean, does it?
The answer to that is diatomaceous will adhere to the bees, if the bees go into it, cuts their legs and their feet. But the bees don't go underneath the hives, it's not a problem. So you can put it under the hive, and what they're trying to do is kill off the larvae from the hive beetle that falls into it.
Okay.
We don't see many bees under the hive. You know, the only bees we see that's close to the hive would be the dead bees, and then we have a bee wren that goes back out and she'll eat the dead bees. So she takes care of that. We have tiny ants who will, we'll just take it out. Take them out.
Well, the only problem is when you accidentally drop the frame at your feet.
When I'm in the hive, sometimes, because I have a hot hive, so some of them are walking underneath, but they're not doing it when I walk up to the hive to inspect it. They do that after I'm in there.
I think you said you keep solid bottom boards. If you have screens and you put the diatomaceous under the hive, bees will gather underneath the
They will
so you
gather.
don't want any screen bottom boards. It's very bad because it changes the aerodynamics inside the hive.
I use solid bottom boards as well, just for general information. Yeah.
Just shifting gears here a little bit, let's get back to the bee spacing again. You're talking bee spacing 3/8 of an inch, right? Is that what the agreed to standard is here?
A quarter to 3/8.
Bee spacing, a quarter to 3/8. So if you're getting them between your frames, wooden frames, because I've seen it on mine and I've got my frame shaped down 1.25 inches, and I've noticed that particular boxes that have a little bit of warpage on them, I see where the drone, they've laid some drone comb and some honey in there between the upper and lower frames. So I'm guessing maybe one of the boxes is out of spec a little bit.
That's quite possible. Also, certain boxes, not necessarily still the case, but at some point there were boxes sold that had a slightly deeper frame rest that was used for that they would. I saw some.
It took a special L-shaped, kind of T-shaped rest that would lift it up. Walter, the old man that started the company, was really fond of this concept that there would be this space underneath the ends of the end bar so that it could propolize down. So he had this special metal frame rest that stuck up about 1/8 of an inch.
And that's what I had on mine. I use those so they don't, I don't have to break frames off, getting the propolis off.
Well, I'm just saying he made the like you said, he cut the frame rest deeper so that to make room.
Yeah, I don't do that, so maybe I should when I use those metals.
So if your frame rests aren't deeper, you might be, the frames will be up higher.
I agree. But
they still propolize it.
I'm just saying that's what.
Yeah, they'll still propolize it, but it's kind of for me, so I don't break the ends of the frame off when I try the frame.
That's another.
I can break it easier when I propolize it down to that.
Well, it's another reason to use all the same brand of boxes and
I
same
did, they're all
styles.
Dedant, but I think they're Dedant ones you have to assemble, but I may have mistaken because they have different grades that they've got commercial, they've got economy, and I may have gone into like cheap man mode and I may have ordered some economy ones.
Yeah, just
mixed with the commercial.
Just measure it and see what it is.
Yeah, I'm going to now when I check it next time. I'm going to measure.
What time are we at?
10 minutes.
10 minutes?
We're breaking up, we've got to get up there. So
All right. Did you have a question? You were raising your hand at some point.
My comment was, in swarm trapping, it takes the sun down, it's left over, what are you going to do with it? You smear it inside of the hive, and that's as good as old things.
Just throw a chunk of it down the bottom of it.
And the other thing is I found that if you use too much, whatever bait lure you've got in there, it drives the bees away. Guys?
No, I'm using.
Could you define slime down to some example?
So after I've extracted the honey out of the wax cappings, I have sort of wax, dark wax, also junk in it left over. When I heat that up to get the wax off it, I'm left with grit and black stuff and propolis and glue that's there. and generally I put it in the compost heap or put it in the ground. What I find is I take that and I smear the inside of the hive with that. That to me is proven very successful in trapping the bees. And then somebody else mentioned what I also do now, instead of putting the swarm blower inside if I'm using it, it goes on the outside of the box. And the one I found really works well. You take a plastic straw and you put stuff it halfway full with cotton wool. You put 2 or 3 drops of lemongrass at the end and stuff it up the other side. It seems to disperse it a lot slower. And if you're looking for lemongrass, you can either buy it from any local place, but try and get as pure as you can. What I found is I buy it from Bulk Aromatherapy. It's organic, and I only pay $20 for a pint of it, which is next to nothing.
So you order
Otherwise,
that
you're paying $7 or $8
I
for
take
pounds.
it, you order that online then?
Pardon?
You order that online?
Order online, yeah.
And a pint of it's light makes a lot. So.
And you can share.
It doesn't